My son trembled as he spoke into the phone. "Dad, he hurt me again. I was a soldier thousands of miles away, powerless." Then the man seized the phone, sneering, "You heard him. My brothers control this town," and my blood ran cold. Imagine getting a call that shatters your world, a whisper from your child, a voice tight with fear, telling you they've been hurt, and the man who did it thinks you're powerless, 1,000 miles away. What do you do when the monster is already inside your home? My name is Marcus Thorne, and for 12 years, the arid dust of Kandahar, the brutal heat of Raqqa, had been my home. I'd learned to read men not by their words, but by the tremble in their hands, the vacant stare in their eyes when everything went sideways. This was a language of violence, a grammar of survival I knew intimately, a stark contrast to the quiet Montana ranch where I grew up, learning that a man's word was his bond, and his fist, a desperate last resort. When I was 17, my father, David, broke his back, and I spent that entire summer running the ranch alone, enduring 16-hour days under a merciless sun. That was when I discovered just how much I could endure. And when my father recovered enough to sell the place, I enlisted. I had something to prove, though I could never quite put into words what it was. The army forged me like steel. I went from a cocky kid to a team leader, earning my ranger tab through blood, sweat, and a singular, almost obsessive focus. My commanders called me Ice because nothing seemed to rattle me. Firefights, IEDs, night raids in hostile territory, I moved through it all with the unnerving calm of a man who'd already accepted the worst and simply decided it wouldn't stop him. Then, in 2019, I met Sarah Miller at a USO event. She was beautiful, with dark eyes that seemed to pierce right through my hardened exterior. For the first time in years, I felt something beyond the mission. We married 4 months later, and our son, Leo, arrived 10 months after that. I tried to balance it all, the deployments, the family, the impossible demands of both worlds. But Sarah eventually grew weary of being a military wife, tired of the empty side of the bed, tired of raising Leo alone while I was a world away. The divorce papers found me in Syria. She kept it civil, kept it clean. Joint custody, though my custody was largely theoretical, given my deployment schedule. Leo was 7 now, and I hadn't seen him in person for 8 months. Video calls, carefully wrapped presents shipped from overseas, endless promises that Daddy will be home soon. It was never enough, but it was all I could offer. That evening, I stood in the operations tent at Forward Operating Base Raven, scanning intelligence reports with Ethan Reed and Jacob Stone, my squad mates. The Syrian desert sun was bleeding out, painting everything in shades of blood and sand. "You good, Ice?" Ethan asked, noticing the tension in my jaw. "Always," I replied, though my mind was a million miles away. Leo's last video call had been strange. He'd seemed nervous, his eyes darting off-screen. I dismissed it as kid stuff, but a tiny, persistent worm of unease had begun to gnaw at me. Then my satellite phone rang. Not the official line, but my personal one. My stomach clenched. Personal calls out here usually meant one thing: emergency. I answered. "Dad?" Leo's voice was a whisper, tight with raw fear. My entire body went rigid. Every muscle locked. "Leo, what's wrong, buddy?" The words burst out, barely audible. "Dad, Mom's new man hurt me again." He hurried on, his voice cracking. He said you're a soldier 1,000 miles away and can't do a thing." White noise filled my head, a deafening roar like an avalanche. My hand clenched around the phone so hard my knuckles went bone white, the plastic creaking under the pressure. Before I could respond, the phone rustled, and a man's voice, thick with sickening arrogance, came through. "You heard the boy. My brothers run this town. You come home, soldier boy. You're gonna find out what happens to heroes who stick their nose where it don't belong." The line went dead. I don't remember crossing the compound to Captain Robert Jensen's tent. One moment, I was staring at a dead phone, the next, I was standing ramrod straight in front of my commanding officer's desk. My voice was steady, almost eerily calm, despite the inferno raging in my veins. "Sir, I need emergency leave. My son is in immediate danger." Captain Jensen looked up from his paperwork, his gaze dissecting my face. He was a 20-year veteran, a man who'd seen it all, and he recognized the look in my eyes. The same look men get right before they do something that can't be undone. "Explain," he said, simply. I told him everything, my voice never wavering. When I finished, Jensen leaned back, his expression grim. "You know what you're asking me to do, Sergeant?" "Yes, sir." "And you know what you're going back to do?" "Yes, sir." Jensen studied me for a long, silent moment. Then he picked up his phone. "Give me transport command. I need a priority flight out of here. And get me Master Sergeant Daniel Rodriguez." 20 minutes later, Daniel walked into the tent, followed by Ethan Reed, Jacob Stone, Christopher Hayes, and Benjamin "Ben" Carter. They were my fire team, the men I'd served with for 3 straight years. Men who'd carried me when I was hit in Mosul, who'd held the line in Raqqa when everything went to hell. These were my brothers. "Gentlemen," Jensen began, "Sergeant Thorne has a family emergency. I'm granting him emergency leave, effective immediately." He paused, his eyes sweeping across each man's face. "I'm also granting all of you leave. You're going with him." Ethan stepped forward, confused. "Sir, we didn't request." "I know what you didn't request, Corporal," Jensen cut him off, his voice firm. "And I know what you're going to do anyway, so let's make it official. 2 weeks emergency leave. All of you. If anyone asks, you were visiting Sergeant Thorne's family for moral support." Jensen's voice hardened. "But understand this, you're still soldiers. You represent this unit, this army, this nation. Whatever you do, whatever happens, I expect you to conduct yourselves accordingly." The unspoken message hung heavy in the air: don't get caught. Don't embarrass us. Do what needs doing. "Yes, sir," they replied in unison. 8 hours later, I sat in a cargo transport, hurtling towards Ramstein Air Base in Germany, then on to the States. My team was around me, weapons cleaned and stowed, but each man wore the same expression, the blank, focused look of operators preparing for a mission. "What's the situation on the ground?" Daniel asked. At 34, he was the oldest of us, a career NCO with a wife and 2 daughters of his own back in Texas. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the research I'd conducted during flight prep. My ex-wife, Sarah, has been seeing a guy named Victor Morales. Small-time criminal in Richfield, Oregon. That's where she moved after the divorce. Population, 12,000. Morales has 2 brothers, Miguel and Ricardo. All 3 have records: assault, drug possession, extortion. "Police?" Jacob asked, his voice sharp. "I called Oregon State Police from the base, reported the abuse," I said, my jaw tightening. "They said they'd send someone for a welfare check. That was 6 hours ago. No call back." Ben Carter, our communications specialist, pulled out a laptop. "Let me see what I can dig up." For the next 2 hours, as the transport droned across the Atlantic, Ben worked his magic. What he found painted an ugly picture. "The Morales brothers aren't small-time," Ben finally announced. "They're part of a larger network. Their uncle, Antonio Rossi, runs a drug distribution operation across 3 counties. The brothers are his enforcers. And get this, Ridgefield's police chief, Michael Hayes, has a brother-in-law who works for Rossi." My blood ran cold. The whole department's compromised. "How compromised?" I asked. 3 complaints filed against the Morales brothers in the last 2 years: assault, domestic violence, intimidation. All of them disappeared from the system. No follow-up, no charges. I felt the ice in my chest spread, numbing everything except the mission. This wasn't just about getting Leo safe. This was about dismantling an entire network that thought it was untouchable. "All right," I said quietly, looking at my team. "Then we do this the hard way." We landed at Portland International at 0600 local time. I'd called ahead to my old army buddy, Kevin Peterson, who'd left the service 2 years earlier and opened a security consulting firm in nearby Vancouver, Washington. Kevin met us at the airport with 2 SUVs, no questions asked. "Good to see you, Ice," Kevin said, gripping my hand. "Heard you needed some support." "Always do," I replied. "What do you know about Richfield?" Small town, big problems, he said, grimly. The Rossi operation is the worst-kept secret in the county. They move meth and heroin up from California, distributed through the I-5 corridor. Everyone knows, but nobody does anything. We drove to Ridgefield in convoy, rolling into town just after sunrise. I directed them past the small downtown, past the local diner and the hardware store, to the neighborhood where Sarah lived. It was a modest, working-class area with chain-link fences and tired lawns. Sarah's house was a small blue Rambler at the end of a cul-de-sac. My throat tightened as I saw Leo's bike lying in the front yard, one wheel slowly spinning in the morning breeze. Eyes open, Daniel murmured. Black Escalade 3 houses down, 2 men inside. I'd already seen them. Watchers. The Morales brothers weren't taking chances. Jacob, Ethan, you're with me, I ordered. Everyone else, maintain position and surveillance. Ben, get eyes in the sky. Ben had brought a commercial drone, small enough to be invisible, but powerful enough to give us a complete picture of the neighborhood. I approached the front door, my team flanking me. I knocked 3 times, firm but not aggressive. The door opened a crack, and Sarah's face appeared. She looked older than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes and a fresh bruise on her cheekbone that makeup didn't quite hide. Marcus, her voice cracked. What are you? Where's Leo? I cut her off. She glanced over her shoulder, then stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind her. You can't be here, Victor. Oh, Marcus, please. You need to leave. You don't know what these people are capable of. Then tell me. Sarah's hands shook as she wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't know. Not at first. Victor was charming, attentive. He had money. I thought he was a contractor or something. By the time I figured out what he really did, I was already in too deep. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He said if I left him, if I went to the police, his family would hurt Leo. Hurt me. I saw what they did to a woman who testified against Miguel. She disappeared. Marcus, they found her car in a ravine 2 months later, but they never found her. How long has he been hurting Leo? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, a cold dread seeping into my bones. 3 months. It started with yelling, then pushing. Last week, she couldn't finish. I felt Ethan's hand on my shoulder, a grounding presence. When I spoke, my voice was calm, almost gentle. Sarah, I need you to trust me. Can you get Leo out of school early? Say it's a family emergency. Sarah shook her head. Victor will know. He has people watching. Let them watch, I said, my gaze hardening. What time does Leo get out of school normally? 3 o'clock. Where's Victor now? He left this morning. He said he had business. She looked at me with desperate, fragile hope. Can you really get us out of this? I'm going to do better than that, I promised her, my voice unwavering. I'm going to make sure they never hurt anyone again. After Sarah went back inside, my team and I returned to the SUVs. Ben had the drone footage pulled up on his laptop. Got something interesting, Ben said. There's a warehouse on the industrial side of town. A lot of traffic coming and going. Our friends in the Escalade have been in radio contact with someone there. Rossi's operation? Ethan asked. Most likely, Ben confirmed. But there's more. I pulled property records. The warehouse is owned by a shell company, but I traced it back. Guess who's listed as a silent partner? Daniel muttered, don't tell me. Police Chief Michael Hayes, Ben stated. Not directly. It's buried under his wife's maiden name and 3 other LLCs. But it's there. I nodded slowly. So, we're dealing with a criminal enterprise with police protection. They think they're bulletproof. What's the play? Jacob asked, looking at me. I looked back at my team. These men who'd followed me into hell more times than I could count. We go to Leo's school. Secure him first. Then we start taking apart their operation, piece by piece. But we do it smart. We document everything, build a case that can't be ignored. And when they come for us, and they will, we make sure we're ready. And if they don't give us a choice? Daniel asked quietly. My eyes were cold as a Montana winter. Then we handle it the way we handled Mosul. Ridgefield Elementary was a sprawling brick building surrounded by playgrounds and portable classrooms. I walked into the main office at 1,400 hours, alone and in civilian clothes, jeans, a flannel shirt, a baseball cap. I looked like any other parent. Can I help you? The secretary, a pleasant woman in her 50s, asked. I'm Marcus Thorne, Leo Thorne's father. I'm here to pick him up early. Family emergency. The secretary's fingers flew across her keyboard. I'll need an ID, and I need to verify you're on the approved pickup list. I handed over my driver's license. She studied it, then her screen, and frowned. I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne, but you're not on the list. Only his mother, she paused, uncomfortable. And Mr. Morales are authorized. I'm his father. I have joint custody. I understand, sir, but we need to follow protocol. If you can have Leo's mother call us and add you to the list. I leaned forward slightly, my voice low but urgent, laced with a steel she clearly wasn't expecting. Ma'am, my son called me yesterday and told me he's being hurt. I flew halfway around the world to protect him. Now, you can call the police if you want. I'd actually appreciate that. But I'm not leaving without my son. The secretary's face went pale. She'd seen the bruises on Leo Thorne. She'd reported them herself to Child Protective Services 2 weeks ago. Nothing had happened. She'd been told the case was under review. Let me get the principal, she said quietly. Principal Helen Davies was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd been in education for 40 years. She listened to my story, saw the military ID that confirmed I was who I claimed, and made a decision. I'll release Leo to you, she said. But I'm also calling CPS and the Oregon State Police. This situation needs to be investigated properly. I'd expect nothing less, I said. Thank you. 20 minutes later, Leo walked out of his classroom, saw his father standing in the hallway, and broke into a run. I caught him, held him tight, felt the boy's small body shaking with fear and relief. You came, Leo whispered into my chest. Always, buddy. Always. As we walked to the SUV where Ethan waited, I examined my son. Leo had a fading bruise on his arm, another on his ribs, visible when his shirt rode up. A searing rage burned in my chest, but I kept my voice calm, comforting. You're safe now, I told Leo. Nobody's going to hurt you again. We drove to a motel on the outskirts of town, a place Ben had scouted earlier. The team had taken 4 adjoining rooms, turning them into a makeshift operations center. Kevin had brought additional supplies, surveillance equipment, secure communications gear, enough provisions to sustain us for 2 weeks. Leo sat on one of the beds, eating pizza, while Daniel showed him pictures of his own daughters. I stepped outside with Ben and Jacob. Police chief just got a call from the school, Ben said, monitoring the scanner. He's dispatching 2 officers to Sarah's house. Good, I said. Let them do their job. We stay clean. But I want eyes on that warehouse tonight. Full surveillance. Who comes? Who goes? What are they moving? That night, Ethan and I conducted the reconnaissance personally. The warehouse sat at the end of a dead-end road, surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Security cameras covered the approaches, but they were cheap commercial models, easily avoided. We moved through the darkness like shadows, using skills drilled into us through years of night operations. From a high position 50 meters out, we watched through thermal optics. I count 6 individuals inside, Ethan murmured. Heavy activity near the loading dock. Looks like they're packaging something. Drugs, I confirmed. They're preparing a shipment. As we watched, 3 vehicles arrived, a Mercedes SUV, a Lexus sedan, and a beat-up pickup truck. Men emerged, including 2 I recognized from Ben's research, Ricardo and Miguel Morales. And then, Victor Morales stepped out of the Mercedes. I'd studied the man's photo, but seeing him in person crystallized everything. Victor was 6'2", heavily built, with slick back hair and expensive clothes. He moved with the swagger of a man who'd never been held accountable for anything. This was the man who'd hurt my son. Easy, Ethan whispered, sensing my tension. We observed for 2 more hours, documenting everything with high-resolution photos and video. The warehouse operation was sophisticated, multiple distribution points, careful packaging, professional-grade security. This was not amateur hour. As we prepared to extract, my phone buzzed. A text from Ben, incoming 2 vehicles heading your direction. Move now. We melted into the darkness, reaching our vehicle just as headlights swept across the road behind us. Someone had spotted us, or at least suspected surveillance. They're getting nervous, Ethan said as we drove away. That's good. Nervous people make mistakes. I nodded, but my mind was already on the next phase. I'd gathered intelligence. Now, it was time to start applying pressure. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to the FBI field office in Portland. I identified myself, provided my military credentials, and reported a large-scale drug distribution operation with law enforcement corruption. The agent who took my call was professional but skeptical, until I mentioned I had photographic evidence and surveillance footage. I can have an agent meet you this afternoon, he said. Make it 2 agents, I replied. And bring someone from the DEA. The second call was to an attorney Kevin had recommended, Emily Watson, a former prosecutor who'd left the district attorney's office after butting heads with corrupt officials once too often. She agreed to represent me in the custody matter and to review my evidence of the criminal enterprise. The third call was to a journalist, Chloe Davis, an investigative reporter with the Portland Tribune who'd written extensively about rural drug operations and police corruption. Mr. Thorne, she said when we met for coffee, I've been trying to crack the Rossi organization for 2 years. If you have what you say you have, I have it, I said, sliding a flash drive across the table. Full surveillance from last night. Faces, vehicles, license plates. Enough to start connecting dots. Chloe studied me. Why are you doing this? You could just take your son and leave. Because Leo isn't the only kid in this town, I said. And these people will keep hurting others until someone stops them. By afternoon, the pressure was mounting. The FBI agents, a veteran named Rebecca Monroe and a younger agent named Alex Chen, reviewed my evidence with increasing interest. The DEA agent, a hard-eyed woman named Olivia Vance, made 3 phone calls during the meeting, each one more urgent than the last. This is solid, Rebecca said finally. But I need to be straight with you. Building a case against a protected organization takes time. We're talking months of investigation, wiretaps, surveillance. If they know we're looking at them, they'll destroy evidence and disappear. So, don't let them know, I said. I can keep the pressure on. Make them think it's just me. Just a father protecting his son. By the time they realize they're under federal investigation, it'll be too late. Olivia Vance leaned forward. You're talking about making yourself bait. I'm talking about doing what needs to be done, I said, my gaze steady. What I didn't tell them was that I'd already started. That morning, Ben had done something beautiful with his computer skills. He'd accessed the Morales brothers' phones, not to wiretap them, which would be illegal, but to send them each a single photograph. The photograph showed Victor Morales at the warehouse, clearly visible, time-stamped, and geotagged. Below it, a simple message, "Smile, you're being watched." The message came from an untraceable number through 7 different servers across 4 countries, but its effect was immediate. By noon, my team observed Victor making frantic calls. By early afternoon, all 3 Morales brothers convened at a local bar, Frank Moretti's Tavern, a known hangout for their crew. Ben's drone captured the meeting, even showing Police Chief Michael Hayes in the parking lot. "They're panicking," Jacob observed, watching the footage. "Look at the body language." "Good," I said. "Panic makes people dangerous, but it also makes them sloppy." That evening, I took Leo to dinner at a family restaurant in downtown Ridgefield. It was a calculated move, public, visible, normal. I wanted the Morales brothers to see that I wasn't hiding. We were halfway through our meal when Ricardo Morales walked in with 2 other men. He saw me immediately, his face darkening. For a long moment, our eyes locked. Then Ricardo smiled, a cold, predatory expression, and walked over. Marcus Thorne, he said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. The famous war hero. My brother told me you were in town. I stood slowly, positioning myself between Ricardo and Leo. And you must be one of the cowards who threatens children. Ricardo's smile didn't waver, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Careful, soldier boy. You might be tough overseas, but you're in our world now. Your world, I said quietly, my voice a low rumble, is about to get a lot smaller. The two men with Ricardo shifted, hands moving toward their waistbands. Is there a problem here? The restaurant owner, Frank Moretti, an older man with kind eyes, had emerged from the kitchen. He held a baseball bat and a phone. Because I've already called the police, and I'm recording everything. Ricardo glanced at the phone, then back at me. No problem. Just saying hello to an old friend. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. My uncle wants to meet you. Antonio Rossi. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, Frank Moretti's Tavern. Come alone. I'll be there, I said. After Ricardo left, Frank apologized profusely. I thanked him, paid for the meal, and took Leo back to the motel. Dad, Leo asked as we drove, his small voice full of worry, are you going to be okay? I looked at my son in the rearview mirror. I promise you, buddy. This is all going to be over soon. That night, the team gathered for a tactical briefing. They're inviting you into a trap, Daniel said, his brow furrowed. Moretti's is their territory. They'll have every advantage. I know, I said. Which is why we're going to flip the script. Ben, can you get eyes and ears inside Moretti's? Already working on it, he replied, typing furiously. The place has Wi-Fi, which means I can access their security cameras. I can also plant some wireless microphones. Plant them during the lunch rush. Nobody will notice. Good. Ethan, Jacob, I want you outside with Overwatch positions. Christopher, you're my backup. You'll be inside, playing the drunk regular. Daniel, you coordinate with our FBI. Friends. If this goes sideways, I want federal agents on standby. And if Rossi wants to talk business? Kevin asked. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then we'll talk. And I'll make sure every word is recorded and admissible in court. Frank Moretti's Tavern smelled like stale beer and cigarette smoke that had soaked into the wood over decades. I walked in at precisely 2000 hours, wearing jeans, a black t-shirt, and a leather jacket. I knew I was being scanned for weapons. Antonio Rossi wouldn't risk a meeting without security, so I'd left my sidearm in the SUV. I didn't need it. This wasn't that kind of meeting. Antonio Rossi sat in a booth at the back, surrounded by 4 men. He was in his 50s, lean and sharp-featured, with silver hair and cold, calculating eyes. He wore an expensive suit that looked wildly out of place in the dive bar. Sergeant Thorne, Rossi said, gesturing to the seat across from him. Thank you for coming. I slid into the booth. Christopher Hayes sat 3 tables away, hunched over a beer, the perfect picture of a lonely drunk. I could feel, rather than see, Ethan and Jacob in their Overwatch positions outside, rifles ready. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said, my voice even. You wanted to meet. Here I am. Rossi's thin lips curled into a smile. I appreciate that. I'll be direct, too. You're causing problems for my organization. The school incident, the surveillance, the federal agents asking questions. This needs to stop. Your nephew hurt my son, I countered. That needs to stop. Victor has a temper. He'll be dealt with. Rossi's smile faded. Not good enough. You don't seem to understand your situation, Sergeant. I run 3 counties. I have police, judges, lawyers on my payroll. You're one man with a grudge. How do you think this ends? I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. It ends with you in a federal prison. See, while you've been building your little empire, I've been building a case. The FBI has my evidence. The DEA is watching your warehouse. And in about, I checked my watch. 10 minutes, a story is going to drop in the Portland Tribune detailing your entire operation, with photos. Rossi's face went completely still. You're bluffing. Am I? I raised an eyebrow. Check your phone. Rossi pulled out his phone, his fingers moving rapidly. His face went pale. Chloe Davis's story had just gone live online, complete with photographs and a detailed breakdown of the Rossi organization's structure. You made a mistake, I said quietly, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. You thought you were untouchable. You thought hurting a kid wouldn't matter because his father was too far away. But I'm not far away anymore. And I'm not stopping until every one of you is behind bars. Rossi's men tensed, hands moving toward weapons. I didn't move, didn't flinch. You pull those guns, I said, and everyone gets caught on camera. Just then, Ben's magic went to work. On every screen in the bar, the TV above the counter, the old-school arcade machine in the corner, even the jukebox display, the same image appeared, a live feed from the security cameras, showing the booth, showing Rossi's men reaching for their weapons. Say cheese, I said. You're live on the internet. Ben had hacked every device in the bar, streaming to multiple platforms. Thousands of people were watching. Rossi's jaw clenched. Turn it off. Not until we're done talking, I replied, my voice steady. Here's how this works, you and your organization are finished. The feds are coming. You can cooperate, cut a deal, maybe see daylight before you're 70, or you can fight. In which case, I'll make sure they add every charge they can think of. Your choice. And Victor. Victor is done hurting people. If he comes near my son again, if he comes near Sarah, if he even thinks about retaliating, I will end him. And I don't mean legally. Do you understand? Rossi stared at me for a long moment, a flicker of something in his cold eyes. You're threatening to kill him. I'm promising to protect my family, however necessary. For the first time, something like respect, or perhaps grudging understanding, flickered in Rossi's eyes. You know, Sergeant, in another life, you'd have made a good soldier for my organization. In another life, I said, standing to leave, you'd have made an honest living. I paused at the edge of the booth. Oh, and Rossi, tell Chief Michael Hayes his career is over. The FBI knows about his partnership. He'll be arrested tomorrow morning. I walked out of Frank Moretti's tavern, knowing every eye in the place was on me. I just painted a target on my back, but I'd also made my position crystal clear. The Rossi organization could surrender or fight, but either way, they were going down. The question was, what would they choose? The answer came at 0200 hours. I was in my motel room, Leo asleep in the other bed, when Ben's voice crackled through my radio. Multiple vehicles approaching your position. At least 8 men, all armed. I was moving before Ben finished speaking. I scooped Leo up, the boy waking with a start, and carried him to the adjoining room where Daniel was on watch. Take him, I ordered, my voice urgent. Get him to Kevin's safe house. Now. Dad? Leo's voice was small, frightened. It's okay, buddy. Uncle Daniel is going to keep you safe. I'll see you soon. Daniel didn't argue. He wrapped Leo in a blanket and disappeared through the back door, moving fast toward a vehicle we'd positioned for exactly this scenario. I turned to my remaining team. They're coming hard. Ethan, Jacob, Christopher. We hold them here, but we do it clean. No kill shots unless absolutely necessary. These men need to stand trial. You sure about that? Jacob asked, his hand already on his weapon. Because they're not coming to talk. I'm sure, I replied, my gaze steady. We're soldiers, not executioners. The attack came 3 minutes later. 2 vehicles pulled into the parking lot, disgorging armed men. They weren't subtle. They were here to send a message, but I'd spent the last 2 days preparing this location. Ben had rigged cameras, motion sensors, and remote access to the motel's electrical and security systems. We knew the attackers were coming before they even exited their vehicles. Lights out, Ben said from his position in a third-floor room. Every light in the parking lot and surrounding motel rooms went dark, plunging the area into absolute blackness. The attackers hesitated, suddenly blind. My team and I, equipped with night vision goggles, moved like ghosts. We'd done this 1,000 times in hostile territory, urban warfare, close quarters, neutralizing armed threats. I dropped the first attacker with brutal efficiency, sweeping his legs and driving an elbow into his temple. The man went down hard, unconscious before he hit the ground. Ethan took out 2 more, moving with the fluid grace of a martial artist. Gunfire erupted, wild and panicked. The attackers were shooting blind, rounds punching into motel walls and vehicles. I moved through the chaos, disarming another attacker, using the man's own momentum to slam him into a parked car. FBI. Drop your weapons. The voice came from the street. Agent Rebecca Monroe and 6 other federal agents poured into the parking lot, weapons drawn, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The remaining attackers, realizing they were surrounded and outgunned, threw down their weapons and dropped to their knees. It was over in 90 seconds. As the agents secured the attackers, Rebecca approached me. "You knew they were coming." "I suspected they might," I said. "That's why I called you 6 hours ago." She shook her head, a slight smile playing on her lips. "You use yourself as bait." "I used myself as evidence," I corrected her. "Every one of these men is guilty of attempted murder, assault with deadly weapons, conspiracy. You can trace them back to Rossi and Victor Morales. He led them here himself. I saw him in the second vehicle." Rebecca shook her head again. "You're either very brave or very crazy." "I'm a father," I said simply. The next morning, the arrests began. The FBI, working with Oregon State Police and DEA, executed search warrants across 3 counties. Antonio Rossi was taken into custody at his mansion. Police Chief Michael Hayes was arrested at his home. Miguel and Ricardo Morales were picked up at the warehouse. And Victor Morales, facing charges that would put him away for 20 years, did something unexpected. He tried to run. Victor Morales made it 60 miles before his luck ran out. He'd fled in his Mercedes, heading for the California border, but I'd anticipated this possibility. Working with the FBI, we put out an alert to every law enforcement agency in the region. When Victor's vehicle was spotted on Highway 101, a tactical team was ready. The vehicle chase ended on a rural stretch of road. Victor tried to make a stand, reaching for a gun, but the federal agents weren't playing games. They swarmed his vehicle, dragging him out, slamming him to the pavement. I watched it happen from the command vehicle, Rebecca Monroe beside me. "That's all of them," she said. "The entire organization, top to bottom." But I knew there was one more piece to handle. That afternoon, I drove back to Richfield with Daniel and Ethan. We went to Sarah's house, where she was packing, preparing to move. "Marcus," she said when she saw me. She looked like a different person. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by a cautious, fragile hope. "I heard about the arrests. Is it really over?" "It's over," I confirmed. "Victor's in federal custody. He'll face charges for what he did to Leo, plus attempted murder, assault on federal agents, a dozen other counts. He's not getting out." Sarah collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face, a wave of relief finally breaking over her. "I'm so sorry. I should have protected him better. I should have." "You did what you could in an impossible situation," I said gently, crouching beside her. "That's over now. You and Leo are safe." "What happens now, with custody?" she asked, looking up. "I mean, I'd thought about this a lot. I'm going back to active duty. My deployment ends in 3 months. Then I'm putting in for a stateside assignment. I want to be part of Leo's life again, truly be part of it. But that means working together, being co-parents, not enemies." "I'd like that," Sarah said softly. We spent the next hour working out the arrangements. Sarah would move to Vancouver, Washington, closer to my eventual duty station at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Leo would have consistent time with both parents. We'd all go to therapy, the 3 of us, to work through the trauma. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. But it was real. And it was right. That evening, I took Leo to a park overlooking the Columbia River. The boy had been quiet since his rescue, processing everything the way kids do, through play, through routine, through small questions that revealed deeper fears. "Dad," Leo asked as we sat on a bench, watching the sun set over the water, "are the bad men really gone?" "They're gone, buddy," I said, wrapping an arm around him. "They're in jail, and they're going to stay there for a very long time. And it happened because of you." I considered my answer carefully. Because a lot of good people worked together. The FBI, the police officers who weren't corrupt, the journalists who told the truth, my team who came to help. Nobody does these things alone. "But you started it," he insisted. "I did what any father would do," I replied. "I protected my son." Leo leaned against me, small and warm. "I knew you'd come. Even when Victor said you couldn't, I knew." I held him closer, feeling something unlock in my chest, a knot I hadn't realized was there finally loosening. "I will always come for you, Leo. No matter where I am, no matter what happens, that's a promise." 3 weeks later, I stood in federal court in Portland, watching as Antonio Rossi, Chief Michael Hayes, and the Morales brothers were arraigned. The charges were extensive: drug trafficking, racketeering, corruption, assault, attempted murder. The judge denied bail for all of them. Victor Morales, facing an additional charge of child abuse, would go to trial in 3 months. But the evidence against him was overwhelming: testimony from Leo, from Sarah, from teachers who'd seen the bruises. Combined with his other charges, he was looking at life without parole. After the arraignment, I met with Agent Rebecca Monroe and Agent Olivia Vance outside the courthouse. "We couldn't have done this without you," Rebecca said, shaking my hand. "Your evidence, your testimony, it was all crucial." "I just want to make sure it sticks," I said, my voice low. "That they don't find some technicality to walk." "They won't," Olivia assured me. "We got them cold. And this case has opened up 3 other investigations into rural drug operations. You've done more than save your son. You've helped clean up an entire region." That afternoon, I returned to the motel to pack. My team had already left, returning to base one by one. They'd face questions about their leave, about what they'd been doing, but Captain Robert Jensen had been true to his word. The official record showed they were supporting a fellow soldier's family emergency, nothing more. Kevin Peterson helped me load the last of my gear. "You did good, Ice," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Real good. Couldn't have done it without you." "Any of you," I replied. "That's what brothers do. You need anything, anytime, you call." My flight back to Syria left that evening. As I sat in the departure lounge, I video-called Leo. The boy was with Sarah, already settling into their new apartment in Vancouver. "When will you be back, Dad?" Leo asked, his face now full of bright anticipation. 3 months. Then I'm home for good. We'll get you signed up for baseball. Maybe go camping. Would you like that?" "Yeah." Leo's face lit up, the fear finally gone from his eyes. After I hung up, I leaned back in my chair, feeling the exhaustion finally catch up with me. I'd barely slept in 3 weeks, running on adrenaline and purpose. But it had been worth it. My son was safe. The men who'd hurt him were in prison. Justice, messy and imperfect as it was, had been served. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel: "Safe travels, Ice. See you on the other side." Another from Ethan: "Drinks when you get back. You're buying." And one from Ben: "Already counting down the days until we're stateside again. Leo's lucky to have you as a father." I smiled, pocketed my phone, and boarded my flight. 3 months later, I kept my promise. I separated from the Rangers and took a training position at Fort Lewis. I bought a house 15 minutes from Sarah's apartment. Leo's room had a view of Mount Rainier. We went camping in the Cascades. Leo joined Little League. On weekends, I coached his team. Slowly, carefully, we built a new normal. Sometimes Leo still had nightmares. Sometimes I did too, different nightmares from different wars, but we faced them together. One evening, As I tucked Leo into bed, the boy looked up at me with serious eyes. Dad, will you teach me to be brave like you? You already are brave, Leo, I said, my heart swelling. You called me when you were scared. You told the truth when it mattered. That's the bravest thing anyone can do. But you came and saved me. And someday, I told him, smoothing his hair, when someone needs help, you'll be the one who comes. That's what we do. We protect the people who can't protect themselves. Leo thought about this, then nodded, a resolute expression on his small face. Okay. I can do that. I kissed his forehead. I know you can, buddy. I know you can. As I left Leo's room, I paused in the doorway, looking back at my sleeping son. I thought about the journey that had brought us here, the desperate phone call, the frantic flight home, the battle against corruption and violence. I thought about the team that had stood with me, the agents who believed him, the people who'd risked their own safety to do what was right. Justice wasn't always clean. It wasn't always easy. But it was always worth fighting for. I turned off the light and closed the door, carrying that truth with me into the night. Looking back, it still feels surreal, like something ripped from a movie. But it was real. Every terrifying moment, every desperate decision. And now, every quiet, peaceful evening with Leo feels like a hard-won victory. If you've ever had to fight for someone you love, or if you've faced down a system that felt rigged against you, I want to hear about it. What would you have done in my shoes, knowing everything was on the line? Let me know in the comments below, and let's keep this conversation going. Your stories matter.